So I am very excited today to have the amazing Alex from The Holding Mother on Nurturing the Future 1001 Days to Save the World. I approached Alex to come on the podcast probably a couple of months back, and kind of time drifted apart, and then we reconnected. And I'm so glad we did, because The Holding Mother is one of those accounts on Instagram that always grabs my attention, because it comes from the heart. All of the messages and the education and the awareness, I feel, comes from a place of real pure service in the name of babies and parents, and bringing together parents and babies through the experience of birth, which is different for every single one of us, and is something that we have to surrender to, but does have consequences for us for the rest of our life. So the work that Alex is doing is absolutely amazing. I feel really grateful that she's on the podcast today. So Alex, would you like to introduce yourself to all of the listeners today?
Hi, Gayle. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy that you want me to talk about what I do, and because it's really important that this information reaches as many people as possible, and that we start raising awareness for where we come from and how that impacts us. And yeah, so my name is Alex. I am the owner of The Holding Mother, and I am a perinatal somatic practitioner. And I mainly help parents explore their baby's prenatal and perinatal, including birth experiences, and help them to heal their babies, or start their baby's healing journey from the very start. And the interesting thing is that it always happens is that when a parent starts to explore their baby's prenatal and perinatal experiences, the parent also starts to think about their own prenatal and perinatal experiences. And one thing goes hand in hand with the other. So when I work with babies, I don't only work with babies. This is not a one-way road. This is work that impacts the whole field, impacts the parents, impacts possibly the parents' parents, and so on and so forth. So it's like the fields start to impact each other. So when I say that I work with babies, I don't only work with babies. I work with adults as well, and with parents who, in the meanwhile, start to address their own imprints, which many times also impact their baby's imprints, and sort of give them a whole different impact, because their parents bring them into the baby's field as well. So that is what I mainly, of course, in the meanwhile, I work directly therapeutically with babies and parents, but I'm also in a mission to raise awareness to pre and perinatal psychology and how our early experiences impact babies, through educational workshops, live workshops, recorded workshops we just started doing this year, not only for parents, but also for professionals, to understand how can they help their own clients, their parents, and their babies.
I love it. And I really would encourage anyone listening to go and have a look at the workshops that are offered. I would definitely love to come on one. I've seen a couple and I haven't been able to make the dates, but what I love is that you're talking about somatics, and this is something that is so alive in me and Blossom and Berry at the moment, is the way of the heart and the body over the head. And I think for so long in the field of baby development, we've been focusing on developmental goals, physical goals, mental goals, and not much really has been explored around baby's heart-centered experience. And because of my personal beliefs and experience as a mother and as a teacher and as a human being, I feel that feeling is the most powerful gift that we've been given as human beings. So it's amazing that you are doing this work. So could you kind of just outline to people, if they're new, like, what is somatic work for babies? What does that entail? How might you work with babies and offer them this healing transformational work?
Yeah, I think this idea of working cognitively with parents and babies, it has a limited scope, really, and a limited power in itself. And I come to do this work through my study in child development, parent-infant relationships, because I've also done a master's in in the psychoanalytic approach in working with babies, adolescents, and families. And that is a somatic training in itself, because when you work psychoanalytic or when you learn how to work psychoanalytic with parents and babies, it's very, very much a bodily experience that you have, or you learn to have as a therapist. But it's like an exchange of an emotional information exchange, and you use that information that arises in your body to work, to know what's going on with the parent and the baby, because it's not verbal. Most of the things that happen with most of us, with all of us, I would say, it's nonverbal. And with parents and babies, even more. So you can have a parent tell you, no, everything is fine. I'm fine, I'm happy, I'm super excited to become a mother. And then what you feel is actually helplessness. You feel it as a therapist in your body. And then you think, oof, there's something here that's not being told. And that somatic information that I'm feeling in my body, that gives me information that I need to explore that with the parent, not directly, but through very sensitive dialogue about what I see in the baby, how the mother wants or needs or wishes to be helped. And more often than not, when you start asking the questions and you start to come closer to the parent's reality, or you start to come closer to the baby's reality, there will be a switch, and the parent starts to cry, or the parent starts to say things that they never said until that moment, or the parent says something like, oof, that's the first time anyone asks me that question, and that's when the window opens, the door opens, and we can start to do the real work. And this is with parents. With babies, we cannot, not only with babies, but also with all of us, pretty much, our first experiences are in the body. A baby who marinates in their mother's womb has its first experience in the body. An embryo is a bodily experience. A blastocyst, the early stages of an embryo, that is a bodily experience. Well, a cellular experience is a cellular experience that grabs information about the environment it's developing in, and then the embryo, and then the fetus, and the fetus will be developing in the environment that is its mother's womb. And these waters where the baby marinates in, that's the environment. That tells the baby's body and senses how that environment where the baby will live in will be. But first and foremost, the first experience for the baby is always a bodily experience. So it's not different from when the babies come out, and when after the babies are born, they are still living within their bodies all the time. So whatever happens in their environment, the vibrations, the energy, the touch, the words, the type of rhythms of the words, and the type of touch that the babies experience. Is it rough? Is it soft? Is it too much for me? Is it too little for me? And every baby will have a different experience. And this experience after birth will also be informed by how the early experiences were. So let's imagine a baby who was undesired. He's not going to have the same experience as a baby who was profoundly longed for. Will not, And then you have the whole pregnancy. How was the mother emotional state of mind? How was the relationship between two parents? How was the mother being supported by the rest of the family? How was the family field like? Was it only two? Was it grandparents around? Was it a loving field? Was it a really ambivalent field? Was it an angry field? How was that field? That will impact the baby. And then we have birth. How was the first moment that the baby was welcomed into the world? Was it rough, too much, too soon? Was it right when the baby decided and self-initiated that birth experience, and no rough hands, no pulling, no pushing, no inductions, nothing that affected that rhythm, that natural rhythm, and that natural communication between the mother's body and the baby's will to be born, right? That is different experience than a baby who is rushed to be born, who isn't expecting to be born right there and then, and suddenly, for some reason, the baby doesn't know and doesn't understand and doesn't feel it's right. The baby's forced to be born, and whatever happens next, the same thing. So even if we are the most loving, caring, incredible parents, which we are, we have to acknowledge, we must acknowledge that whatever happens before will have an impact on our babies. And this is really important to understand. So when a baby comes to me and the baby's crying and crying, and not only crying, because we only hear about crying, but some babies will have twitches, will have like movement, behavioral, bodily repetitions of movements, movements that repeat due to anxiety that is stored in the body. And we can have babies who are showing us their prenatal stories, their prenatal difficult events that they need us to look at, they need to explore that, or they might tell us their birth experience, right? And depending on their baby's, the baby's bodily movements, or the babies when they touch their heads, where they touch their heads. I also look at the facial features. Babies born vaginally have facial features that tell us where there were compression forces from birth. And this is amazing because we can say, here was where baby struggled. So when we see a baby touching their left side, or rubbing more the left side or the right side, or pulling their right ear and touching their right, this is my right, my implicit memory, it's coming all the time when I talk about left and right. So when there's more contact with the right side, and we see that the baby's right eye is lower or recessed, or closer to midline, we know there were compression forces. And the reason why the baby's touching that side is because he needs us to pay attention to what he or she went through. And that was all stored on the right side. And this is what Carlton Terry, who is my beloved, an incredible person and an extremely gifted and very experienced baby therapist and my mentor, he calls somatomagnetism. So the babies call their attention to the places where implicit memories are stored. They want us to look at. And when we get closer to that experience and we tell the baby, oh, I see, that's where it hurts. That's where it all happens. The baby feels that, oh, you're getting me, you're getting closer to it. So either the movement eases and the cry eases, or the cry intensifies during a period of time, which we call memory crying, which is different from needs crying. And we work a lot with memory crying with pre and perinatal psychology. And this has to be a crying that's supported by a therapist. Usually parents do that intuitively. They just don't know they are supporting memory crying. They don't call it that. And when there is an episode of memory crying that's supported compassionately by the parent, or by the parent and the therapist, that memory cry lasts for 1 or 2 or 3 sessions, as much sessions as the baby needs to release that anxiety, and then they stop altogether. And relentless cry does not exist anymore, because the baby was seen, the baby was heard, the baby was validated in their experience, and the anxiety goes away.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that is so powerful and incredible. I mean, I'd love to even be a small part of amplifying what you've just said, because there's so much power in that. And what's so beautiful is, as we said before we came on the podcast, it's about creating a baby-centric world, because we all start as babies. So when we honor babies and put babies at the center, we're basically putting human beings at the center. We're putting deep care at the center. We're putting belonging, like validation, as you said, like welcoming everything, full acceptance, all of those things. So to me, you know, being able to hold space for babies in that way so that they can, you know, release and work through, as you said, what's, you know, the two most significant things that happen in our life is our birth and our death. And both of them are really massively not actually really held space for, I think, you know, and it's interesting why, you know, to go a little bit deeper into why. But I loved what you said about the womb, because, you know, it's interesting because your knowledge, obviously you've got so much incredible experience and academic study and wonderful mentors. My experience really comes from intuition as a mother. And the idea for me, you know, with studying earth-based practices, shamanism, that kind of thing, is, you know, that water is holding all the messages. You know, it's the most powerful conductor of energy. So when, as you said, when you're held in that container, whatever you're receiving, the message energetically is then amplified and creates your world. As you said, you're marinating in this. So we like to talk about the love bubble, it being, you know, the original space in the womb where we're connected through unconditional love, through the placenta, to the source of everything. We can be in a state of complete trust and surrender. We don't need to, we just know that we're just growing at all times. And so when you think about the love bubble in that way, it's like, what's actually been going on in there? Because when we think about, okay, it is a love bubble because it is holding us, but what is actually within that is being communicated to our bodies before we're born. And I think, again, in pregnancy, there's a lot about, you know, what to eat, what to do, like, you know, like how to keep fit and all of these sort of things, but we're not touching on this somatic experience. So powerful.
No, yeah, it's true, and it's very common for parents. And as with you, I come from my studies sort of confirmed in a way that was something missing, but then my maternal experience and my own personal journey in healing myself, that was my confirmation that there was no way I could move forward with my healing journey and my children's healing journey if I didn't look back. And looking back meant to go into this somatic work and work with states of unconsciousness and regression in order to go back, right? So to answer your question about, you know, the love bubble, I think it is very important to acknowledge, and this is one of the most difficult things to work, the emotional realm that we are in as mothers when we are pregnant, because we feel like we know where we come from. We know how difficult it was for us. And we also know that we do not want that for our children. So when we are pregnant, what my experience at least was, and I see many parents going through the same, it's like instead of going through the emotional experiences to drain the difficult energy, it's like they're holding their breath. You know, not to feel them, because if I feel them, the baby will feel them, because the baby is inside of me. So if I feel them, the baby will feel them. But that's not actually how it works. The more we hold our breaths, the more the energy is being pushed down into our wombs, right? So our wombs, because we decided not to, we decide, no, we think, because we don't know better, you know, it's not, and it's important to mention this, I do not work from a place of blaming or, you know, or guilt. I really want people to know and to be informed and fully informed about the impacts of this work. And if there is guilt and shame and blame that you're feeling in your body, it's really important to acknowledge that there's work to be done there. That's the trigger. That's the message that's telling us, oof, this is really hurting inside. And because it's hurting, I know there's work to be done. So when we hold our breaths and we do not do the work because we are too afraid of opening those Pandora boxes and see what's inside, mainly because we are pregnant, it's like the timer is counting, it's going, and our babies will be born. And if we open the Pandora box now, who knows what will come out of it? We don't want to go. It's not the timing, but it's the exact timing to do that, because we are going to release our field, and we are going to release our womb, and we are going to release our baby's field from those energies that are coming from the past. Right. So the babies have a very intelligent, our bodies are very intelligent in managing this, because babies inside the womb actually manage the amount of things that come through umbilical cord. The umbilical cord and babies and the placentas have a very intimate, as you said, intimate relationship. So the umbilical cord is like a friend for the baby. The baby beats, lives, breathes, beats, and receives everything that's meant for their survival through the umbilical cord. But it's a sort of a double whammy sometimes, because babies know that they need the umbilical cord to survive, but they also know that sometimes the mothers are in an emotional state that is too much for the baby to tolerate. And this depends from babies to babies. Not every baby will have the same experience according to any emotional experience that the mothers are having, right? Because babies come with their genetic makeup as well, and they might be more sensitive than others. And these more sensitive babies will be more greatly impacted by what we might call smaller emotional events on the mother's side than babies who are more robust, more robust, emotionally robust, genetically robust. So these more sensitive babies will be more impacted. So the babies will actually press the umbilical cord in order to manage the flow that comes inside their bodies, and they will move to sort of push the toxicity that they are feeling in their bodies away from their bodies or to the side to protect their hearts. You have some babies who are born in a C shape because they are pushing all the toxicity towards one side in order to protect their hearts, right? So you see them all crunched up on one side and really extended on the other, because it's called a shunt. They want to push the emotional unwelcoming feelings or energy into one side to protect their own well-being and survival. So it's not a blame game, nor it's not to raise any guilt or blame, but we really need to acknowledge that it's not because we don't want to feel that our babies will not be impacted. The more we know, when we acknowledge that we have previous experiences that we as parents need to address, the more we'll protect our baby's well-being.
Amazing. So can I ask you a question on that, genuinely sort of coming up? Because I've always, I'm very open-minded to the experience of a baby, because, we can't ever know, can we, 100%? And also there's the kind of, a theoretical understanding, and then there's the truth of every single individual person, which is theirs to own through their bodies. So when we say, when you said babies know what they are feeling and they are able to decide, okay, I want this or I don't want this, is that coming from the energy consciousness that they have as a human being? Because although they aren't, cerebrally able to make decisions through their nervous system in the way that they can when they were born, is this just coming from energy being, as in, yeah, if you put two things together and they, they either repel or they attract? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a physical experience. It's a sensory experience, right? It's what's being taken in through the umbilical cord, and the amniotic fluid doesn't taste well. And you see some babies when they are born doing like
wow.
And when you see these types of expressions, it's not like the other day we were talking about this, me and Carlton, and he was asking, do you think it's like ice cream licking or licking? Because the babies, you feel like the babies are licking, but it definitely sounded like a more like licking. And then usually this licking comes with pushing away movements. And this is our information that babies, the sensory experience at some point in pregnancy, And we can pinpoint which time in pregnancy, more or less, something happened, and due to the baby's type of movements, and we can ask the parents, was there anything happening at around 4 weeks pregnancy? And usually there is something happening at 4 weeks, or whatever is the gestation period. It's very interesting. So yes, it is an energetic experience that babies, does it feel right? Does it feel wrong? It's always a bodily experience with babies, never an understanding as we know, or as we, not a cognitive prefrontal cortex experience. Is really a bodily, sensory, energetic experience the babies are having. And if it feels good, it's good. If it feels bad, they are going to try and push it away.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I think anyone who's listening to this, who is now perhaps thinking, wow, like well, in my pregnancy, this happened, like, have I affected my baby? Is my baby trying to get away from me? Like you say, the kind of like the blah, like, that just from I was just feeling into that as a mother, how if that was the experience I saw with my baby, like how that might make me feel. But I think what you said there that's really important for anyone listening is that as human beings, we're going to feel, and we feel from the place of our experience, and we feel because we're humans. And sometimes the bigger our heart, the more that we feel. And to be a fully expressed human, I think, is one of the most amazing gifts that you can bring. So really the message is that these things may happen to you because you're a human being, and we can't control our environment. If you look at what's happening with babies in the womb in Gaza at the moment, for example, like how they must be reacting to the levels of stress. So really what you're saying is this is a part of the human experience, and you can feel it and heal it and release it, so that we can't avoid it, but we can almost protect our babies from experiencing by owning our own feelings and allowing them. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's perfect, Gayle. That's exactly it. I think the one thing to acknowledge is exactly what you said, is that there's only a limited control that we can have. There are things that we can do in pre and perinatal psychology during pregnancy to help babies already start their healing journey during pregnancy. But if things happen, babies are taken to NICU, wars happen, parents are stressed, life still happens regardless of the work that you can or can't do. And there's always time to heal. I'm 40, and I started my deepest after, I don't know, more than 8 years doing psychotherapy. I knew at the start of this year, I don't even know, I've been doing this for a while, that I needed states of non-consciousness and regression therapy to work whatever was there to work with. Talking therapy was not cutting it anymore. I knew there was more to it before my birth, and not only after, and my childhood trauma didn't explain the whole picture. So I started my healing journey quite late, and my mission is, now that we know what we know, and this has been known for a long time, I think we simply weren't doing such a good job in putting the information out there and letting people know that this was a thing. And now that we do, and now that we are putting more information out there and letting people know, what people need to know really is that there is always time to heal. If your child is 8, if your child is 4, 5, 3, just born, during pregnancy, if you're 40, if you're 60, there's always time to go back and explore your birth and prenatal imprints. And this usually holds a lot of power in your healing journey, because it is something. And let me say this, because when people understand these layers of experience, I think it becomes a little more obvious that we are only discussing when we talk about childhood trauma and from our birth onwards, and our parent-infant relationships and all that, and how they impact us, we're only talking about 1/3 of our experience, because that's only really a small part. Because if you think about our process, we come from somewhere we don't know, but our souls are dropped from the divine, from whatever you want to call them, and then they come and they embody in flesh and bone, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when our embodiment journey starts with the egg and a sperm.
Yeah.
And so we have our transpersonal experience, and now we have our perinatal experiences. And that is from the moment a sperm meets the egg until the baby's born. And then we have our biographical experiences, and that's from the moment we are born until the moment we die. And more often than not, you only hear about 1/3 of our whole experience from our birth onwards. And this is very unjust. This is very unfair to us and to our babies and to the future of the world. You know, we can't always, we can't only address our emotional, physical, social love experience through the lens of a biographical experience. That doesn't seem fair at all. And now that I know what I know, even less, because I know that most of my most powerful data for me to be healed and to feel loved and to feel welcomed in the world comes from my perinatal experience, and part of it from my transpersonal experience, not from my biographical experience. That only sort of was a sort of the explosion of what already came from, like a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I absolutely love this. So, just to kind of recap on that, we're focusing on our more of our conscious bodily lived experience. We're not thinking about that period of time where really that is where the fundamental blueprint of our essence is being activated actually during that, because we're not fully functioning when we're born. We're the slowest mammals to come out of infancy, and we need a lot of help and nurture to do that. But actually thinking about that absolutely crucial time where the seed is put into the soil, that the soil or the amniotic fluid, the environment of the womb, is what is going to be allowing that seed to be fully expressed and to reach its full potential. That's really quite mind-blowing. And then, as you said, there's the bigger questions of, who am I, where do I come from, how do I fit into the big scheme of nature and the interconnected web of life, which is a whole other conversation. So absolutely so powerful to share this, because I think, even within Blossom and Berry, where there is a very strong embodiment vibration and also spirituality, I'm very much an advocate that babies are born as 100% love, because they are come from divine consciousness of pure love. And then what happens to them after that really depends on the expectations, the experiences, the assumptions, the attachments, the reflections and projections of society, parents, all of those around us. But we do start as this 100% love. So to kind of that bit, actually, that middle bit, like we haven't delved as deeply into. So this is actually wonderful to receive this today. I feel like truly inspired to find out so much more about this. Very
it is big. It is big. Even last week I was in session with Carlton, and we were talking about transgenerational transmission of trauma. It's transgenerational or intergenerational? Intergenerational. Yeah. My English was there. So yes, and that belongs to our transpersonal experience, not even to our perinatal experience, because we were already existing. Our cellular existence was already there when we were inside our mother's womb, in her mother's womb, when her mother was pregnant with her. So what was our great-great-grandmother experiencing, or our great-grandmother experiencing, whatever that was, we have it. So we have two options: or we don't acknowledge it and we hold that information and we carry on as if it doesn't exist, or even if it's hard and if it's painful, we address it, And in my situation, for example, and I will tell you a little bit of my story, because I am one of the people who actually, with one of my children, who actually saw a direct impact of this work, because I'm doing myself this work, but I'm also doing with my second baby, with my other one too, but he's a bit older, so we are addressing one child at a time, and it, because it's a long journey, it can be a long journey. And with my little one, we had 3 years ago a very difficult birth, both of us, very traumatic during COVID, very lonely. And my baby, in my workshop, actually, I show a video of my baby. He was pulled with a vacuum extractor, and they tried 4 or 5 times to pull him, and every single time they failed because he was pulling back. And I felt his feet on my ribs, and I remember that, he was not wanting to come out. He came out. We had the most difficult postpartum experience I've ever had. It was really hard. I had birth trauma, which was very hard to overcome. When I finally started to overcome and acknowledge my birth trauma, that was when his healing journey started, because now I'm open and more able to do that. And when I went through his pre and perinatal experiences through his healing journey, we saw the video of him around 1 month old, and I fast forwarded. I put it like, I sped it up, and then I slowed it down. And the people in the workshop were saying, he's trying to get away from something. He's saying, I don't want this. Go away. I don't want this. And you know this, when you see just the baby doing these movements and touching the face and, and making funny baby sounds, you don't really realize that. But then you speed it up and you see a baby trying to escape. And my baby was trying to escape terror, the absolute terror those people were trying to, were making him feel. And when we acknowledged that, and I told him, I'm sorry that you had to go through this horror story, that I was there, I saw it, and this was horrendous for you, it was horrendous for me, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I couldn't protect you. And that is on me. I wasn't able to do that, and I should have, because I'm your mother. And when you start validating the experience, the anxiety starts to ease. And then I worked through my shame. How was his discovery? How was his pregnancy? How did he come about? Was he a desired baby? Because he wasn't a planned baby. And when we knew we were pregnant, it was very difficult for us to, there was this moment of, oh, what should we do now? It's really hard, and another child, and are we prepared for this? Are we not prepared for this? So I really had to work through my shame 3 years afterwards in order to say, this was very hard to accept. It was very hard to accept your existence. It was very hard to welcome you into the world. And it was only when I worked through this shame that my son started to engage in eye contact. He was about to have an autism diagnosis in the UK. He didn't engage in eye contact. He didn't talk to people. He ran away from people. He screamed. He didn't go to the park without a huge tantrum, screaming, help. I'm holding him in my arms, and he's saying, help, help, help. I mean, totally regressed. Every single time we engage in social situations, he would regress. And he wouldn't even establish eye contact with other people. Even with myself was really hard. And this totally changed when I addressed my shame. And now he's going to nursery, really happy. He engages with people. He hugs people. He looks at people in the eye. He kisses people. He tries to communicate, because language was really delayed due to his trauma and the stress response for almost, 2.5 years living with this constant stress response affected, obviously, his language development. And he had, all sorts of sensory processing issues going on for him as well. Highly sensitive child, of course. The reason why he was so impacted by these early experiences, because he is an highly sensitive child who are more impacted by these experiences, but who are also more able to overcome when given the right conditions. They're absolutely wonderful, highly sensitive children.
Well, thank you for sharing that story so vulnerably, and so honestly as well, because there may be people listening right here, right now, who are holding blame and shame for their birth, and that does affect the relationship with your baby. And your baby is such a mirror. I mean, they are so pure, because they are 100% love. And because they are so in the body, they just reflect back to us everything that we need to learn about ourselves. And we have to go first. We have to look in the mirror And we have to take that responsibility that,
Yeah.
you know, I'm going to look at what's within me first, and almost like empty the cup of what it is that you're holding, all of the emotion that you're holding, so that you can then fill that cup with the love that is available for you, and then it overflows and you can serve from the saucer to your baby. But to do that from a place of knowing that it's healing and in the best interest of your family, and that it's not coming from a place of I'm a bad mother, or why is this happening to me, or I've got a difficult baby. You know, this narrative is so powerful to provide the freedom and space for this healing to take place. It's absolutely beautiful. It's just amazing work. I'm in awe. I'm in awe of what you're saying. It's absolutely incredible.
And you're right, it has to come from, I mean, and I say it only can if you are ready to do the work. This is not easy to be, because it is a mix of vulnerability, of profound vulnerability and courage, because you know you will get hurt in the process and you are willing to be hurt in the process. And that's the big difference in doing this work that can have a massive, when I say a massive, it's like a dramatic, people tell me, where is your baby? You know, where is your child? This is not the same child. And it's not. He's not the same child. He's now enjoying life. He's now enjoying the world he lives in, because I was able to feel vulnerable and to address my shame and to rinse and look at myself and say, gosh, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, we use a lot of natural analogies at Blossom and Berry, and I very much see babies as the seed, you know, that essence, that of pure love, of creativity, you know, another seed that's planted into this beautiful world to then flourish and provide gifts and abundance through their expression. And I see family as the soil, and the parents and the carers, the mother, the father, you know, how you identify as the importance of nurturing that space, not only within yourself, but within your home, you know, within the food that you eat, you know, everything that you're consuming and bringing into that soil. And I also think connecting with what you've just there is also about the sun, and that, you know, when our light is dimmed for whatever reason, because we're holding that darkness within it, when we go into that darkness and into the shadows and we shine that light, the sun shines brighter for ourselves and for our babies, and the whole of our environment is illuminated with love and light, which really is how I believe everything flourishes, and why we're all interconnected. So I think that's beautiful, to encourage parents to not be afraid of that shadow and to feel all of the feelings, because I think our biggest fear is that if we feel the feelings, we won't be able to be. But when we're not feeling the feelings, we're being a version of ourselves, which requires so much more energy to maintain, and creates false relationships and inauthentic relating with our babies and our families, which then lasts a lifetime. So it is courageous work. This is big work. And, you know, I honour you and all, you know, all other parents and carers who are brave enough to, you know, unwrap and look at what's there.
Yeah, it is. But as you said before, this comes from a place of intuition. This is not like a one day you acknowledge that there's something that you feel it's not okay with your baby, but you just call the pediatrician and say, oh, the baby's doing this and that. This is not that, you know, this really is coming from a place of intuition, where you say there's more to this, and this can't be addressed as society commonly addresses babies' cries, or no, this is something else. And that is the parent who is ready to do the work, you know, which is, I wish it was more common, but I also know that there's so many people out there wanting to do this work, but they just don't know where to start. Even they don't know this is a thing, and you can address babies' pain by looking into their prenatal and birth experiences. And then, of course, there are, as we know, this work can provoke a lot of big emotions and contradictory feelings. And then, you know, people start asking for the data. And this data quest is really something that really intrigues me, because when we look at the data, and this is something that we talk about quite often, is like, we are like a fact-based science more than there's evidence, of course, 40 years of evidence already. It's there for people to look at if they want to, but it's so much a fact-based science, because when you address it, when you address the pain, and the anxiety totally dissolves and you have a different child, that is for me enough. I don't need to look into research. I don't need to look into, loads of studies, which probably won't have the amount of population we need to prove that this works. With my baby, it worked. It works with all of my clients. It's like magic, Gayle. And sometimes I can't even believe, when I ask Carlton and other people, like, how can this be? It's like magic. Are you sure this was due to pre and perinatal psychology protocols? Because this feels really, oh my God, even
that's
I
really
asked the question.
That's so weird, because as you were talking, the word magic was just coming into my mind, and trusting the magic and mystery of life, because so much of what we define ourselves against is stats, evidence based on a generic vanilla flavored human, and that's not who we are. And once we step outside of that structure and that systematic looking at how life should be, then that's when we really get to know ourselves and know each other, and that's where the magic is, within the mystery of the not knowing. And I think when you're in the realms of consciousness, which is what you're talking about as well, really, is that you can't ever, like, that's so powerful. Consciousness is so powerful. It doesn't want to be measured. It wants to be felt. It wants to be spoken.
Exactly.
In stories, in experiences, in magic, in miracles. That's how it wants to be seen. That's how we feel it in art, in music, and poetry and literature, and all of these things. That's how we feel the magic of consciousness and love.
And you feel it,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will tell you another quick story. And this is about myself, which, it's like magic, as you say. And there was something about my baby's healing journey that started to trigger my own imprinting. And I didn't have panic attacks for a long time. Anxiety has always been there for me since I exist at a cellular level, most probably. Now I'm finding out more and more. But panic attacks happened when I was pregnant with my first child. And then there was something about the healing journey of my second child that triggered this imprinting again. And I started having really bad panic attacks all of a sudden. And it got so bad that every time I went to bed at night and I lay down, I had a panic attack. And at some point I said, I can't live like this. This is not okay. I literally cannot live having a panic attack every single day. So I went through one session with Carmen Rocha, the quantum birth doula. She does matrix reimprinting sessions, and I wanted to try matrix reimprinting. So she did a session with me. And when I was in this state of non-consciousness, I regressed into my the very moments right after my birth. I was a premature baby. I was a preemie. I was born with 7 months old. 7 months old, no, 7 7 months
gestation.
And I knew I was incubated, but I didn't know, and I still don't, that I was intubated, most probably. And when I regressed, I saw a baby in an incubator, all dark around the baby, around the incubator, no people around. And this baby was also incubated. And I was looking at myself, because the moment I saw the image and I fixated the image in my mind, I started to sob, uncontrollably sob. So I was looking at myself and the pain of having been through that. And we work through changing the narrative and reparent myself through my own adult self, looking at my baby self, and what would I do as the parent I know I am to the baby I was looking at, who was myself. And my panic attacks didn't come back until today. I never had a panic attack again. So I just visited myself through regression, and I told my baby self what should have happened if I was my own mother, right? And it was amazing, because I still don't know if I was intubated, but the truth is my panic attacks were held right here, here, I couldn't breathe. It was like it was all held over here on my throat.
Gosh.
And it just released, and I never had a panic attack again.
Well, what was the name of that person, if anyone's listening? Because that sounds the quantum.
Yeah, Carmen Rocha. She's an amazing therapist. She lives in the UK. She works in the UK with Cami Johnson as well. You might know Cami
Yeah,
Johnson.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
it's she's the quantum birth doula. Quantum birth
Amazing.
doula. Yeah,
Well, yeah,
she's
that's
great.
fantastic. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously what we focus on largely is somatics after birth. So we are looking at, communicating to baby through their felt senses, through touch, through yoga, through activation of healing love through the body, through connection, really, because what massage and yoga is a pathway, is a bridge into the body through love, through the felt senses, and that's why it's so powerful. So have you touched on anything around this in your field, how to harness the power of particularly touch, skin to skin, the golden hour? I've recently been reading about Joseph Chilton Pierce's work on placing baby on the left hand side, and how intuitively mothers will always place their babies on their left hand side to breastfeed, because that's the heartbeat is that coming into heart to heart resonance between the mother and the baby is so important. And so from just that simple act of placing baby to the left, to the golden hour, to then nurturing touch, holding, and then going into full massage, what's been your experience from your field of looking at nurturing touch?
I mean, I think that touch is profoundly therapeutic and profoundly needed for babies because, again, it's the physical experience, and the skin, for example, is the biggest. We're talking about different layers, but what you just described for me is a whole body experience, a whole body sensory experience, which for the baby, that was the reality inside the womb. It's always a whole body experience. Is the baby surrounded by amniotic fluid, touching their skin? That is the largest organ in the human body, is the human skin. So whatever comes in contact with the skin is felt by the whole body, right?
Yeah.
So that is the baby's experience when they are inside the womb, with the amniotic fluid touching their skin, with the umbilical cord wrapped around their bodies and touching the umbilical cord, and touching the placenta. And, the placenta is like a big, nice duvet that they can touch and feel, like, when engaged with. And the same with the walls of the mother's womb. And when the babies are born, they are, when the babies self-initiate birth, and then they go through the vaginal, the birth canal, what happens is that a lot of primitive reflexes are triggered in that moment. Primitive reflexes that usually have to do with touch. Either is the baby who is triggered by these primitive reflexes and pushes with their own body against the mother's body in order to actively, proactively go down the birth canal, or is the contractions that squeeze the baby, in different directions. First, the first group of muscles contracting, and then a different group of muscles contracting, that give the babies a sort of like a scanning of the body. This gives the baby this feeling, this proprioception feeling of, these are the limits of my body, the limits of my body, the limits of my body. And this is like a self-awareness bodily experience as well, right? So when the babies come out, if they do not have any kind of sensory experience, and the touch that you provide the baby, this is a sort of a continuation, gives a sense of continuity in the experience to the baby, the touch. And what you were talking about, the heart, is amazing as well, because the heart and the beating of the heart, and the fact that the relationship that the baby has with the mother's heart, and sound and movement, is also very similar, in terms of, if you close your eyes and you think of yourself in the womb and hearing the sound of the heart, and you think that babies, until they are born, they are always head over heart, always head over heart, from the moment they are embryos until the moment they are born, they are head over heart. So they not only have the sensory experience of their mother's heart, but they always also have the experience of their own heart that is broken when they are born. So babies really do need a sense of continuity in terms of this whole sensory experience that is provided by the mother's body and by sensitive, nurturing touch. It's absolutely incredible. And also sensory touch is something that when you are aware of pre and perinatal psychology and somatomagnetism, for example, if you place your hand, my son did that quite often. I used to do energy work with him. So I would place my hand on these places he would touch. Okay, because I knew he was calling attention to that, but I didn't put my hand there because he was very tactile, defensive due to the vacuum. He didn't let anyone touch his head. It was a nightmare, everything that had to do with his head due to his birth experience. So I did energy work. I just placed my hand there, and you start to feel your hand warm, a tingling feeling, and you know there's something there going on, you know, and you are clearing it, and you are bridging the energy and try to clear the energy and send it to you so you can process it and get rid of it, you know, like a cleanse, an energy cleanse. And more often than not, he would grab my hand and he would put it in other places on his head, and I would leave my hand there until he was done, because he was clearly up to something. So it's not only like an agenda that can be done by us adults and sort of promoted by us, which is absolutely fundamental to provide continuity to the babies, but also try to test the other way around. What if the babies decide to take our hands where they need to? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's that. I think it's the sense of groundedness, isn't it? It's the continuous of connection, because we know when we feel disconnected, that's when we die. You know, that's when you saw in studies with small babies, like the condition marasmus, which is where babies just become depressed and stop eating and disconnect and withdraw, not because they're not receiving food, because they don't feel connected to anything energetically. And I think that's the real thing, is that when babies are born and afterwards, in that early infancy, where there is no sense of self, where your sense of self is basically being comprised of everything in your energetic environment, how can we make sure that that bridge of love is continued? That original bridge of, I was in the love bubble, I was there, I was connected to my heart, I was connected to my physical surroundings, I was connected to my mother or my pregnant person. Now I've been born, where is my sense of connection? I am disconnected. When the cord is cut, I'm disconnected. Where are the people? What is the environment that helps me feel connected to myself? And that's why, working with baby's body, baby yoga with proprioception, it's like, here's my arm. This is what my arm does. This is how it works. Like, this is the sense of my body. Okay, that gives me a sense of security and groundedness in my body, so that when things come in and maybe my brain starts to react, and I go into fight, flight, or freeze. Oh, but here's my body. This is my sense of safety. So that's where I think often the real power of touch is overlooked. It's in this sense of that it's a method of connected communication that allows a baby to relax and to receive love through connection. Love and connection for me are the same thing. That is the bridge. It's like how we find ourselves over and over again, through the breath, through the body, through other people, through our environment, through nature, through food. All of these things, the pleasurable things of life, is what makes us feel grounded as a human.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you have this experience, but I do have this experience, not only applying NBOs and newborn behavioral observation to babies and understand what the babies are trying to communicate, but also with babies who have endured a lot of interventions, just like mine and others, or even some level of intervention with babies more highly sensitive. They will show that they don't like touch that much. Or there are parts of their bodies that, like the heads or some other parts of their bodies, they do not welcome touch. And this is really important to understand, that when babies are refusing touch, that's because there's an implicit memory coming up. Usually babies would love to be touched, but if they don't, either in their heads or their bodies, this is because touch usually is attached to a really difficult experience they have endured, either prenatal experience or, more often than not, a birth experience they have been through that attaches touch. For example, a cesarean. Many cesarean babies are tactile defensive, and they do not enjoy being being touched, or being touched trigger a lot of difficult situations that they don't like baby massage, or they don't like being handled a lot, they don't like having baths. So there are a lot of tweaks here and there and adaptations that parents need to do when babies are tactile sensitive. But when they are, pre and perinatal psychology really, really does help in releasing that energy. Then babies will welcome more often than not. Again, depends on the babies in the field, but usually it works like magic. But touch, I mean, absolutely incredibly important to build connection and provide babies with continuity, which nowadays they don't really. Most of the babies we know, they don't have a lot of sense of continuity of
Yeah.
experience from the moment they are born, because they are invaded, they are pressured to be born, they are forced, they are taken away, they are done to, and babies don't like being done to, as we adults do not like being done to. So
Yeah,
there is
absolutely.
not a sense of continuity of experience that touch really does bridge and provide.
Yeah, I know, I agree. If your first sense of touch was hands coming in to remove you from the womb, then that's going to have a certain association when you feel hands on your body,
Yeah,
because that experience is going to be embedded. So I think that the I do believe that we've been given the sense of touch as humans to provide physical to find to soothe and to nurture and to calm. You know, our heart chakras are in our hands as well. So I do believe that. But then it's like, again, not vanilla flavoring all human beings and saying all babies love touch, all babies love
yeah,
massage, you know, but some babies may prefer a containment hold, some baby may just prefer a hand, like in a like you say, a non-intrusive part of the body.
yeah,
For some babies, they might just want to have a blanket placed on them and it's not a human touch. But these are all ways to physically connect baby to the body. I think that's the thing that really is
yeah,
central to what we're doing. But again, you know, some people do come and say, I did baby massage with my baby and they really didn't like it. Does that mean there's something wrong with my baby? Or they'll say to me, oh, you know, I feel a bit embarrassed saying this because I know you love baby massage, but my baby didn't like it. But I'm like, no, because that's like expecting that, you know, everyone wants to have a hug in the same way. Everyone wants to experience like sexual intimacy or pleasure in the same way. Like every single person is different. And this is
yeah,
part of the mission, I think, really, that will help us all, is to realize that yes, we are the same, but we're all absolutely completely different, and we can own our unique experiences. And in that process of owning our story, our birth story, our prenatal story, our ancestral story, that is the freedom to just stand in your power and be who you are. So
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, really amazing work. Oh, I have loved this conversation. This is probably one of the longest podcasts I've done. I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, I just want to talk to you all day
Yeah.
long.
You know,
I'm
Gail, I'm known, my last workshop was supposed to be 2 hours and it went for 4 hours. And, you know,
well,
people
I
wanted to keep listening and to keep talking. And
know.
I just kept talking and I was loving it. So,
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're in flow. That's what happens to me as
yeah,
well. When I get connected to my subject, and my subject is always love, and that's love for, you know, for parents and babies through all the different somatic experiences we can offer. I'm the same. I'm just like, I look up and I'm like, where's the time gone? So please, if you're listening to this, go and check out the incredible work that Alex does, the Holding Mother, on Instagram. And we're going to put the details of her website as well into the show notes. But do you want to just tell, you know, if there's anything at the moment, obviously this, if you're listening to this in a few months' time, it might have retrospectively moved on, but is there anything right now that people can access from you to learn more of what you've shared today?
well, right now I just finished my live workshop recently in October, and I launched I just sold the recording of that. It was the very first workshop I did about, you know, pre and perinatal psychology. So now I'm going to edit and put it out there at some point throughout November. So yeah, that will be available for people to learn a little bit more about pre and perinatal psychology, about how obstetric interventions impact babies, and how can we tell when babies are moving in certain ways that babies might be struggling and need further support. So that is mainly what my workshop is about, and that will be available again very soon.
Amazing. Well, I'm definitely going to be taking that.
Yay.
100%. I have learned so much, and I just love how, you know, intuitively there's so many beautiful strands that come together through through conversation and contemplation and coming together to share. And I think that's something that's so important, to collaborate in these spaces, and like each person is picking up from where the other person is leaving. So I very much feel like you've joined some dots for me today in my work, so that I can have this larger like continuity of care. So it's been a great honor and privilege. I'm truly grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Gayle, for having me. It was really an honor to be here talking to you.
No problem. No problem.